Jake Morrison pressed his face against the cold metal window of the observation deck. The stars looked different now. They seemed dimmer, more distant, like they were trying to hide from what was coming. He had been the commander of Frontier, Station Alpha for 3 years, but he had never felt this alone. The station floated in the darkness between two dead solar systems. 50,000 people called it home. Families with children, scientists working on new discoveries, farmers growing food in the biodomes, and soldiers who still believed they could protect everyone. Jake wished he could share their hope behind him. The door slid open with a soft hiss. He turned to see Dr. Lisa Campbell walking toward him. Her lab coat was wrinkled and stained with coffee. Dark circles under her eyes told him she had not slept in days. She carried a data pad in her shaking hands. "Commander, we need to talk," Lisa said. Her voice was quiet and tired. Jake nodded and gestured to the chairs near the window. They sat down, and Lisa placed the data pad on the small table between them. The screen showed images of strange alien technology covered in symbols that hurt to look at. "I finished studying the wreckage from the Keffer scout ship," Lisa began. "What I found is not good news." Jake had expected this. Nothing about the Keffer Empire was good news. For 6 months, their ships had been moving through human space like a plague. Every colony they visited went silent. Every defense fleet sent to stop them disappeared without sending a single message. "Tell me," Jake said. Lisa touched the screen, and the images changed. Now it showed microscopic views of strange devices that looked like tiny metal spiders. "They don't just kill people, Jake. They erase them. These machines break down organic matter at the molecular level. They turn living things into basic elements and then absorb those elements into their ships." Jake felt his stomach turn cold. "You mean they eat us?" "Worse, they remove all trace that we ever existed. No bodies to bury. No DNA to remember us. By nothing." Lisa's voice cracked. "I found records in their computers. They have done this to 17 different species across the galaxy. Complete extinction. Not one survivor from any of them." The commander stared out at the stars again. Somewhere out there, the New Horizon was supposed to be bringing supplies and reinforcements from Earth. The colony ship had gone silent 3 months ago. Jake knew now that it was never going to arrive. "How long do we have?" he asked. "Their main fleet is moving toward us. Based on their speed, maybe 2 weeks. Maybe 3 if we are lucky." Jake stood up and walked to the communication panel on the wall. He pressed a button and spoke into the microphone. "Captain Burke, please report to Observation Deck 7 immediately." Within minutes, Ryan Burke entered the room. The captain was young for his rank, but his team of scouts had brought back more intelligence about the Keffer than anyone else. His uniform was dusty from his latest mission, and his face was grim. "What did you find out there?" Jake asked. Ryan sat down heavily in the chair Lisa had moved away from. "The Outer Rim colonies are gone. All of them. Kepler Station, New Boston, Haven Point. When we got to New Boston, the planet was still there, but everything else was just empty. No cities, no people, no animals. Even the plants were gone. Just bare rock and dead soil." Lisa made a small sound of distress. She had friends on New Boston. "Did you see any of their ships?" Jake asked. "Yes, sir. 3 of them were still in orbit around New Boston. They are massive. Each one is easily 10 times the size of our largest battleship. And they have smaller ships that move around them like insects around a nest." Ryan paused and rubbed his tired eyes. "Commander, I have to tell you something else. We intercepted one of their transmissions." Jake waited for him to continue. "They know about us. They know about Station Alpha. They know we are the last major human settlement still active in this sector." Ryan looked directly at Jake. "They are coming here on purpose. We are not just another target. We are their final target." The 3 of them sat in silence for several minutes. Outside the window, the stars continued their ancient dance. unaware that one small species was about to disappear forever. Finally, Jake spoke. What about the evacuation ships? Can we get everyone off the station? Where would they go? Ryan asked. The Kefir have ships watching every hyperspace route. Any ship that leaves will be destroyed before it gets a day away from here. Lisa suddenly looked up from her datapad. Wait, I'm reading something strange here. She touched the screen several times, bringing up new information. The station's central computer has been accessing the cultural archives from Earth. It has been playing music through the internal communication system. Jake frowned. Music? What kind of music? Old Earth music. Something called Celtic traditional music. The computer selected one piece and has been playing it on repeat through the lower levels. Some of the families down there have been asking about it. Ryan shrugged. Maybe the computer is malfunctioning. Stress on the system from all the emergency protocols we have been running. But Lisa was studying her datapad more closely. No, this is not a malfunction. The computer made a deliberate choice. It accessed thousands of music files and selected this one specific piece. The file is labeled as the Gael, and it is connected to something called the Last of the Mohicans. Jake had heard of that. It was an old Earth story about people making a final stand against impossible odds. The irony was not lost on him. Commander, Lisa continued, there is something else. The computer has been broadcasting this music on very low-powered transmissions into space, as if it is trying to send a message. The three of them looked at each other with new understanding. The station's artificial intelligence had access to all of human history and culture. It knew what was coming. Maybe it was trying to preserve something of humanity, even if it was just a song. Jake made his decision. Lisa, I want you to continue studying the Kefir technology. Find any weakness you can. Ryan organized the defense teams, but also prepare evacuation ships for the children and elderly. We will send them toward the galactic rim where maybe the Kefir will not follow. What about the rest of us? Ryan asked. Jake looked out at the stars one more time. We make our stand here. If humanity is going to end, then we end it with dignity. We show the galaxy that we were here and that we mattered. As if responding to his words, the soft sound of Celtic music began to play through the room's speakers. The melody was beautiful and sad, speaking of loss and courage and the choice to face the darkness with honor. The last settlement of humanity. Prepare for its final chapter. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the communications center of Station Alpha, surrounded by screens that showed nothing but static and silence. Each screen represented a different human colony or military base. 3 days ago, there had been voices coming from these screens. People reporting in, asking for orders, sharing information. Now there was only the endless hiss of empty space. She pressed a button and spoke into her headset. Tau Ceti Base, this is Admiral Sullivan. Please respond. Nothing came back except more static. She tried again. New Geneva Colony, are you receiving this transmission? Still nothing. Kate had served in the human fleet for 25 years. She had fought pirates, explored new worlds, and helped establish colonies across 3 star systems. She had never imagined that she would live to see the end of human civilization. A young technician approached her station. His name was Mark, and he had been working without sleep for 2 days straight. Admiral, we received a partial transmission from the Centauri system about an hour ago. The signal was very weak, but I think you should hear it. Kate followed Mark to his workstation. He played the recording, and through the crackling static, they could hear a woman's voice. The voice was frightened and urgent. This is Captain Rodriguez of the research vessel Discovery. The Kefir ships have arrived in our system. They are using some kind of weapon that we have never seen before. Our shields are useless. The weapon does not just destroy our ships. It makes them disappear completely. The atomic bonds of the hull are coming apart. We cannot fight this. We cannot run from this. If anyone receives this message, Do not engage. The Kethfer in direct combat. Find another way. Fine. The message ended in static. Kate closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She had lost many friends in her career, but never like this. Never knowing that they had been erased from existence itself. Admiral, Mark said quietly, there is more. We received fragments of messages from other locations. All of them say the same thing. The Kethfer have weapons that break apart matter. At the molecular level, nothing we have can stop them. Kate nodded and walked back to the main communication board. She needed to find Jake Morrison and tell him what they were facing. But as she reached for her communicator, one of the screens suddenly came to life. A man's face appeared, but the image was broken and unclear. "This is anyone out there?" the man said. His voice was distorted by interference. "This is Engineer Collins from Mining Station Beta. We have been hiding in the asteroid belt for 6 days. The Kethfer destroyed our main facility, but some of us escaped in maintenance ships." Kate grabbed the microphone. "Engineer Collins, this is Admiral Sullivan on Station Alpha. How many survivors do you have?" 12 people, Admiral. "We have been monitoring Kethfer communications, and we discovered something important. Their ships coordinate with each other, using quantum frequency transmissions. But something is interfering with those transmissions in the system." Kate felt a spark of hope. "What kind of interference?" "We do not know, Admiral. But twice in the past 3 days, their formation has broken apart for several minutes. Their ships move randomly, like they could not hear each other. Then, interference stopped, and they reformed their attack pattern. The transmission began to fade, but Kate could still hear Collins speaking. Admiral, we think the interference is coming from your station. Are you broadcasting anything on subspace frequencies?" Kate looked at Mark, who was already checking the station's transmission logs. He found something quickly and showed her the screen. "Admiral, the station has been broadcasting music on low-power subspace frequencies." "It started 4 days ago." "Music?" Kate asked. "Yes, ma'am. The same Celtic melody that has been playing through the station's internal speakers. The computer has been sending it into space automatically." Kate felt pieces of a puzzle starting to fit together in her mind. "Collins, are you still there?" "Barely, Admiral. Our power is running low. Listen carefully. I want you to record any changes in Kethfer behavior and match them with timestamps. Send us everything you observe. We may have found something important." "Understood." "Admiral, Collins out." The screen went dark again, but Kate felt more hopeful than she had in weeks. She left the communication center and headed for the research levels to find Dr. Campbell. She found Lisa in her laboratory, working with a team of scientists over pieces of Kethfer technology. The wreckage was spread across several tables, and Lisa was using various instruments to analyze the alien materials. "Admiral Sullivan," Lisa said without looking up from her work, "I was hoping you would come down here. We have made some interesting discoveries." Kate approached the main table where Lisa was working. The Kethfer technology looked like nothing she had ever seen. The metal was smooth and dark, covered with symbols that seemed to move when she was not looking directly at them. "What have you found?" Kate asked. Lisa picked up a small device that looked like a metallic spider. "This is a neural interface. The Kethfer use these to connect their minds directly to their ships and weapons. It allows them to coordinate perfectly with each other." She placed the device under a microscope and adjusted the view screen so Kate could see what she was looking at. The inside of the device was incredibly complex, with tiny circuits that pulsed with energy. The interesting thing is that these neural interfaces are designed to filter out certain types of sensory input. Specifically, they block anything that might cause emotional responses. The Kethfer have literally removed their ability to feel emotions. Kate studied the image on the screen. "Why would they do that?" "Control," Lisa said. "A species that cannot feel fear, anger, love, or sadness is easier to organize into a conquering army. But there is a weakness here, Admiral. These filters are not perfect, certain frequencies can still get through. Lisa moved to another table where she had set up audio equipment connected to pieces of Kefir technology. I have been playing different sounds through their communication devices. Most sounds are completely blocked, but some frequencies cause the devices to malfunction. She played a recording of random noise and nothing happened. Then she played a recording of human speech and again nothing happened. Finally, she played a recording of the Celtic music that had been broadcasting through the station. Immediately, the Kefir devices began to spark and smoke. Some of them actually cracked apart. "Admiral," Lisa said with excitement in her voice, "human music affects their technology. Not all music, but specifically music with complex emotional patterns. The Celtic melody we have been broadcasting is particularly effective." Kate felt her heart racing. "Are you saying we can use music as a weapon against them?" "Possibly. But we need to understand more about how this works. I need to test different types of music and find the frequencies that cause the most disruption." At that moment, Jake Morrison entered the laboratory. He looked tired and worried, but when he saw the broken Kefir devices on the table, his expression changed. "What happened here?" he asked. Kate quickly explained what Lisa had discovered. Jake listened carefully, and when she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "So the station's computer has been broadcasting music that interferes with Kefir technology," he said finally. "And we have survivors out there who have observed this interference affecting their ships." "That's right," Lisa said. "Commander, I think the station's artificial intelligence figured this out before we did. It has access to all of human culture and all of our scientific knowledge. It may have discovered this connection and started broadcasting the music to protect us." Jake walked to the laboratory's communication panel and pressed a button. "Tom Bradley, please report to Research Lab 7 immediately." Within minutes, Tom Bradley entered the room. He was the station's chief engineer, a man who could fix anything and build devices that should not have been possible with their limited resources. "Tom," Jake said, "we need you to build something that has never been built before. We need a weapon that uses music to disrupt alien technology." Tom looked at the broken Kefir devices on the table, then at the audio equipment Lisa had been using. "How much time do I have?" "The Kefir main fleet will be here in 10 days, maybe less," Jake said. Tom picked up one of the damaged alien devices and studied it carefully. "I will need every engineer on the station, and we will need to convert the main communication array into a broadcasting weapon." "You have whatever you need," Jake said. As Tom left to begin his work, Kate looked out the laboratory window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the most powerful military force in the galaxy was coming to destroy them. But for the first time since this all began, she believed they might have a chance to fight back. The music of humanity was about to become a weapon of war. Tom Bradley had not slept in 3 days. His hands were covered with cuts from working with sharp metal, and his eyes burned from staring at circuit diagrams. But he kept working because he knew that every hour might be their last chance to build something that could save them. The main engineering bay of Station Alpha had been transformed into a massive workshop. Every available engineer, technician, and scientist was working on different parts of the project. They were building something that had never existed before, a weapon that used music instead of bullets or energy beams. Tom stood in front of a huge display screen that showed the technical drawings for their new device. It looked like a combination of the station's communication array, a concert hall sound system, and several pieces of captured Kefir technology. "The theory is simple," Tom explained to the group of engineers gathered around him. "We take the Celtic music that has been disrupting their ships, amplify it through our main communication array, and broadcast it directly at their neural interfaces. If we can overload their systems, their ships will lose coordination." A young engineer named Sarah raised her hand. "Tom, how do we know this will work on their entire fleet? We have only tested it on small pieces of their technology." Tom nodded. It was a good question, and he did not have a good answer. "We don't know, Sarah. but it is the only weapon we have. He turned back to the display screen and pointed to different sections of the design. The main challenge is power. To effect an entire fleet of ships, we need to broadcast the music with enough strength to reach across several thousand kilometers of space. That means we need to route power from the station's main reactor directly through the communication array. Another engineer, an older man named Pete, looked worried. Tom, that much power could overload the array completely. We might get one transmission before the whole system burns out. Then we better make that one transmission count, Tom said as the engineers continued their work. Jake Morrison entered the bay with Dr. Campbell. Lisa was carrying a data pad that showed new information about Kefir technology. Tom, we have an update, Jake said. Lisa has been analyzing more of their equipment, and she found something important. Lisa stepped forward and activated her data pad's projection system. A three-dimensional image appeared in the air, showing the inside of a Kefir neural interface. I discovered that their neural implants have different settings for different ranks of their society. The higher-ranking Kefir have more complex implants that control larger numbers of lower-ranking individuals. Tom studied the projection. You mean they have a hierarchy system built into their brains? Exactly. If we can disrupt the neural implants of their commanders, the lower-ranking Kefir will lose their coordination completely. They will not know what to do without orders from above. Jake looked at the projection with interest. How do we target their commanders specifically? The command-level implants operate on slightly different frequencies, Lisa explained. They need to process more information, so they use a broader range of neural pathways. That makes them more vulnerable to our music weapon. Tom felt a surge of excitement. This changed everything. Instead of trying to disrupt an entire fleet, they could target the command structure and cause the whole invasion force to fall apart. Lisa, can you identify which frequencies will be most effective against the command implants? Tom asked. I am working on that now. But I think we need someone who understands music better than any of us do. At that moment, a voice spoke from behind them. Maybe I can help with that. They turned to see a woman in a military uniform walking toward them. She was carrying a violin case and had the confident posture of someone who had performed in front of large audiences. Lieutenant Grace Miller, she said, introducing herself. I heard you were looking for someone with musical expertise. Jake recognized her name from the personnel files. Lieutenant Miller, you were a professional musician before joining the military, correct? Yes, sir. I played violin with the New Earth Symphony Orchestra for 8 years before the war started. I enlisted to help with the evacuation missions, but I have not had much chance to use my musical skills in combat. Tom looked at her violin case with new interest. Lieutenant, we need someone who can take a basic melody and modify it to target specific frequencies. Can you do that? Grace smiled for the first time in weeks. Commander, I have been listening to that Celtic melody playing through the station for days. It is a beautiful piece, but it is also mathematically perfect for what you are trying to do. She opened her violin case and took out her instrument. The violin was made of dark wood and had been crafted by hand on Earth over a century ago. It had survived the journey to the colonies and had been her constant companion through years of uncertainty. The melody you are using is called the Gael, Grace continued. It was written as a lament, a song of mourning and loss. But it also has themes of defiance and courage. The mathematical structure creates emotional resonance patterns that are very powerful. She raised the violin to her shoulder and began to play. The familiar melody filled the engineering bay, but Grace was playing it differently than the recorded version they had been hearing. Her version had more emotional depth, with subtle changes in timing and tone that made the music seem alive. As she played, several pieces of Kefir technology on the nearby workbenches began to spark and smoke. The effect was much stronger than anything they had achieved with recorded music. Incredible, Lisa whispered. The live performance is affecting their technology much more than the recordings. Grace lowered her violin and looked at the damaged alien devices. Music is not just about the notes you play. It is about the emotion and intention behind those notes. When a human musician plays with real feeling, the music carries information that cannot be recorded or reproduced artificially. Tom felt all the pieces of their plan coming together in his mind. Lieutenant Miller, would you be willing to perform this music live when we broadcast our weapon? Yes, sir. But I will need to modify the melody to target the specific frequencies that Dr. Campbell identified. Give me a few hours to work with her data, and I can create a version that will be devastating to their command structure. Jake looked around at his team of engineers, scientists, and now a violinist who might save them all. How long do we need to complete this weapon? Give us 4 more days, Tom said. We can have the broadcast array ready by then. And I can have the music ready in 2 days, Grace added. Jake nodded. The Kefir fleet will be here in 6 days. That gives us a small margin for testing. He paused and looked at each of them. I want everyone to understand what we are attempting here. We are going to fight the most powerful military force in the galaxy using a violin and an old Celtic song. Tom grinned despite his exhaustion. Commander, when you put it that way, it sounds crazy enough to work. Over the next 2 days, Grace, work closely with Lisa to understand exactly how the music affected Kefir neural implants. She practiced a modified version of the Gael until she could play it perfectly, incorporating the specific frequencies that would target their command officers. Meanwhile, Tom and his engineering team worked around the clock to build their BROADCAST weapon. They connected the station's communication array to the main reactor and installed amplification systems that could boost the music signal to incredible power levels. On the 3rd day, they conducted their first full test. Grace stood in the center of the engineering bay, surrounded by captured Kefir technology. As she began to play her modified version of the Gael, every piece of alien equipment in the room began to malfunction simultaneously. The neural interfaces cracked apart, communication devices burst into flames. Even pieces of their hull plating began to vibrate and crack. It works, Tom said with amazement. It actually works. Grace continued playing, and the effects grew stronger. The music seemed to reach into the very core of the alien technology and tear it apart from the inside. When she finished, the room was filled with smoke and the smell of burned electronics. Every piece of Kefir equipment had been destroyed. Gentlemen, Grace said as she lowered her violin, I think we are ready for the concert of our lives. The alarm bells rang through every corridor of Station Alpha at exactly 060 hours. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the command bridge, watching the long-range sensors as hundreds of red dots appeared on the display screen. The Kefir main fleet had arrived ahead of schedule. How many ships? Jake Morrison asked as he joined her at the sensor station. Over 300, Kate replied. Her voice was steady, but Jake could see the fear in her eyes. They have brought their entire invasion force. Through the bridge windows, they could see the distant flashes of light as the alien ships dropped out of hyperspace. Each flash represented a vessel large enough to destroy a city. Together, they formed an armada that could eliminate entire star systems. Captain Ryan Burke ran onto the bridge with a damage report in his hands. Commander, they are already attacking the outer defense platforms. Our automated weapons are having no effect on their shields. Jake looked at the tactical display. The Kefir ships were moving in perfect formation, like a school of deadly fish swimming through space. Their coordination was flawless, each ship knowing exactly where the others would be at every moment. Time to target? Jake asked. 18 minutes until they reach effective weapons range, Burke replied. Our defense grid might slow them down for another 10 minutes after that. Jake activated the station-wide communication system. All personnel, this is Commander Morrison. The Kefir fleet has arrived. All military personnel report to battle stations. All civilian personnel proceed to the central plaza for final instructions. He turned to Kate. Admiral, are our ships ready? Kate nodded. Every vessel we have is prepared to launch. 12 military ships and 36 civilian craft converted for combat. It will not be enough to stop them, but we can buy time for the music weapon. Jake pressed another button on his communicator. Tom Bradley, report. Tom's voice came through the speakers, sounding tired but determined. The broadcast array is online and connected to the main reactor. We are ready when you give the order. And? Lieutenant Miller? She is in position at the main transmitter. Commander, I have to warn you that this much power could overload our entire electrical system. We might lose life support after the broadcast. Jake understood. They were betting everything on one massive transmission. If it failed, they would not get a second chance. Grace Miller, can you hear me? Jake called into his communicator. Grace's voice came back clear and strong. I am ready, Commander. I have been practicing the modified version of the Gael for the past 6 hours. I know it perfectly. Jake looked around the bridge at his officers. These people had served with him for years. They had built Station Alpha together, turned it into a home for thousands of families. Now they were preparing to defend it with their lives. All ships, this is Commander Morrison. He announced over the fleet communication channel. You know what we are facing. You know the odds. But remember that we are not just fighting for ourselves. We are fighting for every human who ever lived and every human who might live in the future. We are the last of our kind, and we will not go quietly into the darkness. The response came back from 12 different ship captains, their voices, mixing together in a chorus of determination. Understood, Commander. We are with you. Jake gave the order, and the human fleet launched from Station Alpha's docking bays. The ships were small compared to the Kefir vessels, but they moved with purpose and courage. As they flew toward the approaching alien armada, each ship began broadcasting the same Celtic melody that had been playing through the station for days. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The perfect formation of the Kefir fleet began to wobble and break apart. Ships that had been moving in synchronized patterns suddenly veered off course. Some of them collided with each other, creating brilliant explosions in the darkness. It is working, Kate shouted. Their coordination is failing. But the celebration was short-lived. The Kefir fleet was enormous, and even with many ships confused and damaged, hundreds of others continued their advance. The larger command vessels seemed less affected by the music, and they began issuing new orders to restore order to their formation. Tom, we need full power to the music weapon now, Jake commanded. Beginning the main broadcast in 30 seconds, Tom replied. Grace, are you ready? In the station's main transmitter chamber, Grace Miller stood alone in a room filled with massive broadcasting equipment. The walls were lined with speakers and transmission arrays, all focused on amplifying her violin to impossible levels. She could feel the power building in the machinery around her. Like standing in the center of a thunderstorm, she raised her violin to her shoulder and took a deep breath. Everything humanity had ever been, everything they had ever hoped to become, depended on how well she could play this one song. Grace began to play the Gael, but this was not the gentle melody that had been drifting through the station for days. This was music filled with every emotion she had ever felt. The grief of losing her home world, the fear of facing extinction, the love she felt for her fellow humans, the defiance of refusing to surrender. The amplified music burst out from Station Alpha like a wave of pure sound. It traveled through space at the speed of light, carrying with it the mathematical patterns that could destroy Kefir neural implants. The effect on the alien fleet was devastating. Command ships that had been coordinating the attack suddenly went dark. Smaller vessels began spinning out of control as their navigation systems failed. Throughout the fleet, Kefir officers who had not felt emotions for centuries were suddenly overwhelmed by feelings they did not understand. On the command bridge of the largest Kefir vessel, Supreme Commander Vexter felt something he had not experienced since childhood: The neural implant that had controlled his thoughts for 40 years was crackling with interference, and through the static, he could hear something impossible. Music. For a moment, he remembered what it felt like to be afraid. He remembered what it felt like to be sad. He remembered what it felt like to love something so much that you would die. To protect it, the memory lasted only a few seconds before his training took over, and he ordered his technicians to block the transmission. But those few seconds were enough to plant a seed of doubt in his mind. Back on Station Alpha, Grace continued to play as the power levels around her climbed higher and higher. The broadcasting equipment was operating far beyond its design limits, and she could smell the electronics burning. But she did not stop playing. The human fleet engaged the confused Kefir ships in direct combat. Without their perfect coordination, the alien vessels were vulnerable. Human ships that should have been destroyed instantly were able to outmaneuver their larger opponents. Captain Burke, leading a squadron of converted civilian ships, managed to destroy 3 Kefir cruisers before his own vessel was hit. As his ship began to break apart, he continued broadcasting the music until the very end. One by one, the human ships were destroyed, but they took many alien vessels with them. More importantly, they proved that the Kefir could be defeated. In the transmitter chamber, Grace felt the equipment around her beginning to fail. Sparks were flying from the broadcasting arrays, and the air was thick with smoke. But the music was still reaching the enemy fleet, still disrupting their operations. She played louder, putting every ounce of her strength into the performance. The violin strings were cutting into her fingers, but she ignored the pain. This was the most important concert of her life, and she would play until the very last note. On the bridge, Jake watched as more and more Kefir ships fell silent or began attacking each other. But he also saw that the station's power grid was failing. Emergency lights were flickering, and several sections had already lost life support. "Tom, how much longer can we maintain the broadcast?" Jake asked. "Maybe 2 more minutes before everything shuts down," Tom replied. "But Commander, I think 2 minutes might be enough. Look at the sensor readings." Jake looked at the tactical display and felt his heart leap with hope. Nearly half of the Kefir fleet was disabled or destroyed. The remaining ships were scattered and confused, no longer acting as a coordinated force. But even as he watched, the alien commanders were adapting. The surviving ships were moving away from the station, trying to get out of range of the music weapon. "They are retreating," Kate said with amazement. "They are actually retreating." Jake knew it was only temporary. The Kefir would regroup and return with better protection against their music weapon. But for now, for this moment, humanity had won a victory against impossible odds. In the transmitter chamber, Grace played the final notes of the Gael as the equipment around her finally overloaded completely. The last thing she heard before the power failed was the sound of her own music echoing through space, carrying the voice of humanity to the stars. The silence after the battle was almost worse than the fighting itself. Jake Morrison stood in the darkened command center of Station Alpha, surrounded by broken equipment and the smell of burned electronics. Emergency power gave them only dim lighting, and half of the station's systems had failed completely. "Damage report," Jake said to Captain Burke, who had somehow survived when his ship was destroyed. Burke had been rescued by another vessel just before his cruiser exploded. "We lost all 12 military ships and 28 of the civilian vessels," Burke replied. "Total casualties are over 800 people. The station's main reactor is offline. Life support is running on backup power, and we have maybe 6 hours before the air recyclers fail completely." Jake nodded grimly. They had won the battle, but the cost had been enormous. And he knew the Kefir would return soon with a plan to counter their music weapon. Admiral Sullivan approached from the communication station, where she had been trying to contact other human settlements. "Commander, I have been monitoring subspace frequencies since the battle ended. Something unusual is happening across the galaxy." Jake turned to look at her. "What do you mean?" "Our music broadcast was powerful enough to reach beyond this star system. Ships and colonies hundreds of light years away picked up the transmission. And now we are receiving reports that Kefir fleets in other sectors are experiencing the same coordination problems we caused here. Tom Bradley limped into the command center, his left arm in a makeshift sling. The chief engineer had been injured when the main reactor overloaded, but he had refused medical treatment until his work was finished. The broadcast array is completely destroyed, Tom reported. But before it failed, it sent our signal through subspace across half the galaxy. Every communication relay, every military beacon, every emergency transmitter automatically repeated the message. Jake felt a spark of hope. You mean other human forces are using our music weapon? Not just human forces, Admiral Sullivan said. We are receiving transmissions from species we have never heard of before. Alien civilizations that have been hiding from the Kefir for decades. They heard our music, and now they are fighting back. Dr. Campbell entered the command center carrying her datapad and looking excited despite the destruction around them. Commander, I have been analyzing the sensor data from the battle. The effect of our music on the Kefir was even more dramatic than we expected. She activated her datapad's projection system, showing a three-dimensional map of the recent battle. Look at this pattern. When our music reached their command ships, it did not just disrupt their neural implants. It caused a cascade failure throughout their entire fleet network. The projections show how the music had spread from ship to ship. Like a virus, each vessel passing the disruptive signal to others through their quantum communication links. The Kefir use interconnected neural networks to coordinate their fleets, Lisa continued. When we disrupted their command officers, the effect spread to every ship they were connected to. That is why we were able to disable such a large portion of their force. Jake studied the projection with growing understanding. So if we can reach one Kefir fleet with our music, it could affect Kefir forces across multiple star systems. Exactly. And that is what appears to be happening now. Reports are coming in from across the galaxy of Kefir fleets suddenly breaking formation and retreating. Tom looked at the broken equipment around them and shook his head. But we cannot broadcast again. The array is destroyed, and we do not have power to build another one. Admiral Sullivan turned from the communication station with an urgent expression. Commander, we are receiving a transmission from the Vega system. It is a human colony ship that has been hiding in the asteroid belt for 3 months. Jake activated the main communication screen, and the face of a middle-aged woman appeared. Her uniform was torn and dirty, but her eyes were bright with hope. This is Captain Martinez of the colony ship New Dawn, she said. We monitored your battle with the Kefir fleet. We saw what your music weapon did to them. Commander Morrison, you have given us something we thought we had lost forever. You have given us hope. Captain Martinez, what is your situation? Jake asked. We have 1,500 colonists aboard, including many children. We have been running silent for months, but our supplies are almost gone. When we heard your music broadcast, we decided to take a chance and reveal our position. The image changed to show a view from the New Dawn's bridge. In the distance, Jake could see several Kefir ships floating motionless in space. The alien fleet in our system stopped attacking after your broadcast reached us, Martinez continued. Their ships are just drifting now. Some of them are actually broadcasting messages on open frequencies. Messages we have never heard from the Kefir before. Admiral Sullivan leaned forward. What kind of messages? They are asking questions. Questions about music, about emotions, about what it means to feel fear or sadness or love. Commander, I think your music did more than disrupt their technology. I think it reminded them of something they lost long ago. Jake felt pieces of a larger puzzle beginning to fit together in his mind. The Kefir had not always been the emotionless conquering force they were now. They had once been a species, capable of feeling, of creating art, of understanding beauty. Captain Martinez, are you in immediate danger? Jake asked. No, sir. The Kefir ships in our system appear to be completely inactive. Some of our people are even suggesting we try to make contact with them. Tom looked at Jake with concern. Commander, that could be extremely dangerous. We do not know how they will react. But Jake was thinking about the bigger picture. If their music had awakened something in the Kefir, if it had reminded them of emotions they had forgotten, then maybe there was a chance for something other than endless war. Captain Martinez, I want you to try something, Jake said. Play our music recording for any Kefir that will listen. But do it carefully and be ready to run if they become hostile. Over the next several hours, reports continued to come in from across human space. On colony after colony, Kefir fleets had stopped their attacks and were broadcasting confused messages. Some were asking for explanations of human customs. Others were requesting copies of human music and literature. Dr. Campbell worked frantically to analyze the data they were receiving. Commander, I think we are witnessing the breakdown of the Kefir Empire from the inside. Their entire society was built on the suppression of emotion and the elimination of individual thought. But our music has reawakened those suppressed feelings. What does that mean for us? Jake asked. It means that even if they destroy Station Alpha, even if they kill all of us, the damage to their empire has already been done. The idea of emotion, of art, of individual choice is spreading through their fleets like a contagion they cannot stop. Admiral Sullivan called Jake to the communication station. Commander, we are receiving a priority transmission from an unknown source. The signal is coming from the direction of the Kefir home worlds. Jake activated the main screen, and the image that appeared shocked everyone in the command center. It was a Kefir, but unlike any they had ever seen. This one's face showed expressions of confusion and curiosity instead of the usual cold emptiness. I am Sub-Commander Zefka of the Kefir Expeditionary Force, the alien said. His voice carried emotions that no Kefir had expressed in centuries. I am transmitting on all frequencies to any humans who can receive this message. Jake stepped forward. This is Commander Morrison of Station Alpha. We can hear you. Commander Morrison, your music has done something to us that we did not think was possible. It has made us remember things we thought we had forgotten forever. Emotions we eliminated from our society long ago are returning to my people. What do you want from us? Jake asked carefully. We want to understand. We want to learn about these feelings that your music has awakened in us. Some of my people are frightened by these new emotions, but others ... Others remember what it was, like to create beauty instead of destruction. Zefka paused, and Jake could see that the alien was struggling to find words for concepts he had never been allowed to express. Commander Morrison, there are Kefir fleets throughout the galaxy that are no longer following orders from our home worlds. Your music has caused a revolution in our society. But there are also fleets that are trying to eliminate these infected Kefir before the rebellion spreads further. Jake understood immediately. You are asking for our help. Yes, we are asking you to continue broadcasting your music. We are asking you to help us remember how to be more than just conquerors. We are asking you to teach us how to feel again. Jake looked around the darkened command center at his exhausted crew. They had started this fight trying to save humanity from extinction. Now they had somehow become the teachers for an alien empire that was learning to rediscover its own lost humanity. Sub-Commander Zefka, Jake said, we will do everything we can to help you. But first, we need your help to survive. Our station is damaged, and we have thousands of people who need medical attention and supplies. We understand, Commander. Morrison, Kefir ships loyal to the new way of thinking are already moving to assist you. We will protect Station Alpha while you teach us. 1 year after the Battle of Station Alpha, Grace Miller stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt station, watching ships from dozens of different species dock at the expanded ports. The station had grown into something nobody could have. Imagine a meeting place where former enemies learned to become friends. Her violin case sat on the table beside her, the same instrument that had changed the course of galactic history. The scars on her fingers had healed. But she would always remember the day she played music that saved not just humanity, but an entire empire. Jake Morrison approached from behind, walking with a slight limp from injuries he had received during the station repairs. He now carried the title of Galactic Cultural Ambassador, a job he had never wanted but had grown to love. "The ceremony is about to begin," Jake said. "Are you ready?" Grace picked up her violin case and smiled. "I have been practicing for months. This performance needs to be perfect." They walked together through the corridors of the new station Alpha. The walls were decorated with artwork from dozens of different worlds. Human paintings hung next to Kefir sculptures, and music from various species played softly through the speakers. The station had become a living museum of galactic culture. In the main assembly hall, representatives from over 50 different species had gathered for the first annual Day of Remembrance. The event honored those who had died in the war, but also celebrated the peace that had grown from their sacrifice. Dr. Campbell sat in the front row, wearing her new uniform as Director of Interspecies Communication Research. Next to her sat Sub-Commander Zefka, who had become the leader of the Kefir Reformation movement. His people called him a traitor, but the free Kefir called him a hero. Admiral Sullivan took the stage first to address the crowd. She had been promoted to Grand Admiral of the new Galactic Defense Alliance, an organization that included reformed Kefir ships alongside human vessels. "1 year ago, we thought we were facing the end of our species," Sullivan began. "We believed that death was our only choice. But we discovered something more powerful than any weapon. We discovered that music, art, and emotion can change hearts and minds across the entire galaxy." The audience, which included beings with scales, fur, tentacles, and forms that defied description, listened quietly to her words. Many of them had their own stories of how the human music broadcast had affected their worlds. Today we remember not just the humans who died defending Station Alpha, but all the beings across the galaxy who have died in wars caused by fear and misunderstanding. We promise to honor their memory by building a galaxy where such wars are no longer necessary. Admiral Sullivan stepped down, and Jake took the stage. He looked out at the diverse crowd and felt amazed by how much had changed in just 1 year. "When we first broadcast our music into space, we thought we were sending our final message before extinction," Jake said. "We never imagined that we were actually sending an invitation for the galaxy to remember what it means to feel, to create, and to hope." He gestured to Zefka in the front row. "Sub-Commander Zefka and his people have taught us that even the most feared enemy can become a friend when they remember their capacity for emotion. The Kefir Empire may have conquered worlds through force, but the Kefir people have conquered our hearts through their courage in choosing change." Jake paused and looked at Grace, who was waiting in the wings with her violin. "Today, we dedicate this station and this alliance to the memory of all who were lost and to the hope of all who are yet to be born. Lieutenant Grace Miller will now perform the piece that started our journey toward peace." Grace walked onto the stage carrying her violin. The hall fell completely silent as she raised the instrument to her shoulder. She had performed this melody hundreds of times over the past year, but today felt different. Today, she was not just playing for humans, or even for the audience in front of her. She was playing for every being in the galaxy who had ever hoped for something better. She began to play the Gael, but this version was unlike any she had performed before. Over the months, she had learned musical techniques from dozens of different species. The melody now included harmonies inspired by Andromedan crystal singers, rhythms borrowed from the percussion masters of Tau Ceti, and emotional depths that reflected the experiences of beings from across the galaxy. As she played, something magical happened in the assembly hall. Members of different species began to hum along, each adding their own musical traditions to the performance. The Kefir delegation, led by Zefka, sang in their ancient language, words they had not been allowed to speak for centuries. The music filled the hall and spread beyond it, broadcast across subspace to every corner of the galaxy. On distant worlds, beings stopped their daily activities to listen. Former enemies sat together and shared the experience of beauty. Dr. Campbell watched the performance with tears in her eyes. Her research had shown that the effects of human music continued to spread through Kefir society. Entire sectors of their former empire had declared independence and were learning to govern themselves through cooperation instead of conquest. But the changes went beyond just the Kefir. The music had inspired other species to emerge from, hiding and share their own art and culture. The galaxy was experiencing a renaissance of creativity that had not been seen for thousands of years. As Grace played the final notes of the Gael, the audience rose to their feet in appreciation. But the applause was mixed with other sounds, the clicking of claws, the whistling of air through breathing tubes, and vocalizations from species that had no equivalent to human clapping. After the ceremony, Grace walked through the stations. New cultural district. Here, beings from different worlds had established schools, art galleries, and music halls. Human children learned mathematics from Andromedan teachers while young. Kefir studied poetry from human instructors. She stopped at a small music shop run by an elderly human woman named Maria. Inside, she could hear someone practicing violin, but the style was unfamiliar. Grace entered the shop and found a young Kefir girl trying to play a human violin. The girl's technique was rough, but she was attempting to play the Gael. "That is a difficult piece," Grace said gently. "Would you like some help?" The girl looked up with wide eyes. "You are Lieutenant Miller. You are the one who played the music that freed my father from the old ways." Grace knelt down beside the girl. "What is your name?" "I am called Yethina. My father was a soldier in the old empire, but when he heard your music, he remembered that he wanted to create beautiful things instead of destroying them. Now he teaches art to other former soldiers." Grace helped Yethina adjust her grip on the violin. The secret to playing this melody is not just in the notes. You have to feel the story it tells. It is about people who faced impossible odds, but chose to fight for something they believed in. "What did they believe in?" Yethina asked. "They believed that love and beauty and hope are more powerful than hatred and destruction. They believe that even in the darkest times, there is always a reason to keep creating, keep trying, keep caring about others." Yethina nodded seriously and tried to play the melody again. This time, the notes were clearer and more confident. As Grace listened to the young Kefir play a human melody that had changed the galaxy, she realized that their victory was complete. They had not just survived the war, they had transformed it into something beautiful. The music of humanity no longer echoed alone through the stars. It had become part of a galactic symphony that included every species willing to choose cooperation over conquest, understanding over fear, and love over hatred. Years later, when historians studied the end of the Kefir Empire and the beginning of the Galactic Cultural Alliance, they would mark the moment when Grace Miller first played the Gael through the broadcasting array of station Alpha. But Grace knew that the real victory was not in that dramatic moment of battle. The real victory was in the quiet moments that followed. The victory was in former enemies teaching each other new songs, in children of different species playing together, and in the growing understanding that the galaxy was big enough for everyone to find their own way to create beauty. The last of the human settlements had become the first note of a new galactic civilization. And the music played on, spreading hope and wonder to every corner of the universe. One melody at a time. In the end, the Gael had become more than a song of last stands and final sacrifices. It had become an anthem of renewal, of species learning to sing together in harmony, of the truth that some things, art, music, love, and the connections between all living beings are truly worth preserving across the stars. The memory of that dark time when humanity faced extinction would always remain. But it would be remembered not as an ending, but as the beginning of something far more beautiful than anyone had dared to imagine.